Alright, what's going on, guys? Chapter 2 of the Guardians of Desire. Let's get right into this. Now, this chapter starts off with a picture of Guts. Now, there is a colored version of the same picture as well, so it is out there on the internet if you guys want to take a look at it. Now, the chapter starts off with a Baylet, and Guts looks very panicked and very nervous in its presence. Now, Guts immediately grabs Vargas by the neck, holds him up in the air, and says, "Who the hell are you? Where'd you get this thing?" Now, Vargas claims that he stole it from the Count, and it seems like Guts believes him. Now, upon throwing him on the ground, Guts inquires who he is, and Vargas admits that he used to be a castle physician. Now, even though the Count was cruel during those times, he was still at the very least human, but nowadays, not so much. And that all changed about 7 years ago. And because of this transformation, he began to eat people, dissect them alive, and just torture them to all hell. And it turns out that his inquisition of heretics became nothing more than an excuse to acquire more bodies for his sustenance. Now, Vargas wanted to get out of the castle. He wanted to flee with his wife and children. Unfortunately, they were all caught, and his family was hacked up right in front of them as he was tied up. Which is just absolutely gruesome to think about. I mean, imagine being tied up, tortured, and then watching your family members tortured as well and eaten right in front of you. I mean, just absolutely horrific. Just thinking about this image, Puck is in a daze and a little bit sick to his stomach. Guts, on the other hand, looks like he's keeping his wits about him. Of course, we already know that he's seen many instances like this already. Now, Vargas admits that he was a prisoner of fear during this time, and to escape from his imprisonment, he took a drug that feigned his death. Now, I'm wondering, he was locked up and tied up. How did he get this drug in there? Did he have it with him at all times? You would have thought that the Count and his men would have searched his body and got rid of any substances or objects, but apparently he was able to do it. And then the real mystery as well is how the heck did he get the Count's Baylet? I mean, not only did he fake his own death, but he was able to steal the Count's most prized possession. You would have thought that would have been locked up in a chamber somewhere. So a lot of questions here. I mean, it doesn't really affect the overall story in any regard, but I'm just really curious as to how he was able to pull this all off. Now, Vargas has spent the last 7 years looking into religion and the occult and trying to figure out the very nature of this object, but he hasn't been able to figure anything out. Now, Guts says that it's a key that opens a portal to a world that overlaps our own. It's a key that summons demons from another dimension that have manipulated the dark side of human history since ancient times. Now, if you're a fan of Hellraiser, this is very similar to the Lament configuration, and it has been noted that Kentaro Miura was a big fan of the series, so definitely some parallels there. And then Guts mentions that the Baylet summons the 5 members of the God Hand, and we just see these dark shadows and a big ball in the background. Of course, this is all going to make sense later on, but for now, it's very ominous, dark, and mysterious. And upon hearing this, Vargas and Puck are very nervous and shocked. Now at the castle, we see that Zondark's in a delirious state. He's very hurt. He wants to kill the Black Swordsman. His Majesty the Count comes in and is wondering what is going on. Now as Zondark is frantically screaming that he wants to kill the Black Swordsman, the Count tells Dahl and the others to leave the room. And he's not taking no for an answer. Now I thought this next scene was kind of funny. Like, Zondark is so pissed off that he lost to the Black Swordsman that he's banging his head against one of the walls. And then the Count puts Zondark in a chokehold and says, "You want to kill the Black Swordsman, right?" And to grant his wish, he opens his mouth and this huge slug-like creature comes right out. And after releasing it, he says, "Take it inside of you, my daemon." Very disgusting and very ominous, I gotta say. Now, one of the castle guards says that they found out the location of the Black Swordsman. Now, Dahl wants to act quickly, but the Count says, not so quickly. We need to catch him off guard here. We'll just send one man. And that one man turns out to be the demon-possessed Zondark. Now, back at Vargas's place, we see Puck looking at the Baylet. He's making funny faces, whacking it with his hands, and, just kind of inspecting it in general. Now, what's really interesting about this whole sequence is that the Baylet opens its eye and it looks at Puck. Now, I don't think we've ever seen that happen before with the Baylet, besides like the eclipse or besides the Baylet being activated for the God Hand to come down. Now, Puck asks Guts how to summon the God Hand, but Guts has no idea how to do that. Now, Guts asks Vargas how the Count came upon the Baylet, and he says that he happened to buy it from a caravan of merchants that stopped by the castle one day. So it just kind of happened by chance. Now, Vargas pulls out a map of the castle and shows him a secret passageway that should lead to the Count's room. And he tells Guts that he's been waiting for a day like this, and he says, you know, you're my only hope, please avenge me, kill the Count for all the wrongdoings he's done. But upon touching Guts, the Black Swordsman just kicks him right off. And he even says that Vargas looks like a monster. Puck angrily grabs him and says, why are you always picking on people like that? But it turns out that Vargas doesn't really care. He's like, look, as long as you avenge me, I don't really care about anything else. Now, Guts begins to hear something, and in a flash, Zondark smashes through the room with his warhammer. Now, Guts immediately recognizes Zondark, but he does note that he looks a little different from before. Now, the two clash with each other, but this time around, Zondark is able to knock the Black Swordsman down. And it's not long before Guts realizes that Zondark's no longer a human being. Guts then proceeds to slash off Zondark's left arm. Unfortunately, the arm begins to grow right back. We see this grotesque, amorphous-like substance that just grows out of his arm, and yeah, it's stretching all over the place, and it looks absolutely disgusting. It picks up the weapon once again, and it looks like we're ready for round 2. Guts realizes that the situation has changed. He realizes that he's fighting against a monster now. The two go at it once again, with Guts taking severe damage. And Zondark uses his monster-like arm to sort of whip it around really quickly, and Guts is doing as best as he can just to defend against it. Now, as this is all happening, the various structures in the house are breaking apart, and one of them even falls down on Vargas. Now, because Zondark is swinging around the battle axe like a whip, he realizes that they're probably going to get chopped up to little bits, and there's really nothing they can do at this point. Puck even notes that it's too fast to see, but as we see in the next panel, Guts is successfully defending the attacks. He then lunges forward and slices off half of Zondark's head. And because of this, Puck comes to the determination that Guts is not just some strong bruiser, he's actually a master swordsman, and he can both attack and defend with great precision. Unfortunately for Guts, Zondark is still smiling, and we see the slug-like creature that we saw before oozing out of Zondark's head. And I gotta say, this is one of the most disturbing panels in all of Berserk. I mean, you know, just the crazed smiling face on Zondark as we see this disgusting creature just like oozing right from his forehead. And it's not long before we find out that this creature is in fact the Count. Or at least a version of the Count. He tells Vargas long time no see, and Vargas just looks absolutely horrified and shocked right now. Now Vargas goes to grab the Baelet, and the Count's like, hey, it's been 7 long years, we should probably continue where we left off. And now, even though the Count is this monstrous strong foe, he does acknowledge that Guts is probably the strongest human he's ever encountered, and that no other human could ever take him down. Now the Zondark monster looks to attack once more, but just as that's happening, the roof starts to collapse on him. Vargas leads Guts through a secret passage, and they escape through the sewers. Now upon escaping the sewers, Guts notes that it wasn't the Count, it was like a daemon. So it turns out it's only a portion of the Count. His true form will be revealed later on. Now, before parting, Guts wants to take the Baelet and says, look, think of it as like a payment for killing the Count for you. Now, Vargas is a little bit reluctant, but Guts takes it nonetheless and is like, later. Now, as they're parting ways, Puck acknowledges that Vargas is a good person, and, you know, Vargas has got this really nice smile on his face. You know, it's good that even though he's gone through all this pain and torture in his life, that he can still have a moment of happiness and bliss. He then reminds Vargas that you gotta live for the future and you gotta look ahead, and trying to avenge the past is always a wasted effort. Now, Vargas acknowledges this, but unfortunately for him, we see the Count's daemon lurking in the water, and it ends up grabbing Vargas and taking him in. Now, as Guts is walking through the town, Puck remarks that, hey, you know, you could have at least taken Vargas to a safe place. I mean, it was kind of rude of you to leave him like that. And Puck's like, well, you know, you're sharing the same mission after all. I mean, you're allies. Why don't you just help each other out? And Guts is just not having any of this. He's like, allies? Me and him? I can't be bothered by some good-for-nothing bastard acting like we're friends. He'll end up dragging me down with him. And to further rub salt in the wound, he's like, that goes for you too, Bug. Now, Guts hears a conversation behind a wall that there's going to be another execution today. And it's supposed to be a warning for a certain person, which Guts realizes that it's for him, meaning that Vargas most likely got caught. Now, Guts proceeds to inspect his various weapons and just get ready for the next battle while Puck is telling him, hey, we need to do something here. But of course, Guts is not really listening. You know, he just puts on his cannon arm and is just being very silent right now. Now, Puck flies off, and Guts begins to reminisce about Vargas. You know, he reminisces about the fact that his entire family got sliced up, and it happened right before his eyes, and it was his sons and his wife. and he begins to touch his brand, and, he thinks about the fact that he's like, please avenge me, and, Guts is getting very emotional, very angry, so it seems like Vargas's pleas for help, his pleas to be avenged, are not going on deaf ears. It seems like Guts is definitely thinking about it at some level. Now, currently, Vargas is at the execution ground, and the Count quickly finds out that the Baylid is gone, which means that the Black Swordsman likely has it. Now, Puck notices that Guts came to the execution grounds, and he's very exuberant. He's like, oh, you came! Great! Now we can save Vargas! But it looks like he got the wrong idea, because Guts claims he just wants to watch him die. And he's like, hey, if you care so much about Vargas, why don't you do something about it yourself? And then Guts callously says, the reward for ambition too great is self-destruction. And during this whole little soliloquy, Puck is clenching his sides. He just looks so distraught and so heartbroken. And he even mentions, it burns, dark and violent emotions pounding into me, self-hating, destructive, burning like black magma. And now Puck asks Guts a very interesting question right here. He's like, Guts, are you afraid? At some level, even though Vargas is this decrepit old man, you're both fighting a losing battle. So in a sense, you're kinda on the same level playing field. Now, Guts is not too pleased with this talk, but upon squeezing Puck, he notices that the elf is crying, which sort of makes him a little bit surprised and a little bit empathetic. Just a little bit at this point. And as Puck leaves, he's like, should I feel compassion? You gotta be kidding me. So this is the first time in the manga that we see, at least, that Guts starts to feel empathy for others, that he starts to show love for his common man. Not a lot of love though, just a little bit, but he's getting there one step at a time. Now what's interesting here is that Puck starts getting a splitting headache because of all the fear, anger, and sadness in the crowd of people. So the swirling emotions around the execution are affecting Puck in a negative way. Now the executioner raises up his axe and is ready to kill Vargas, but Puck comes flying in at the last moment. He's like, I'm gonna save this man. He's been such a good guy to us. He's given us so much information. I gotta do it. But unfortunately for him, he just bounces right off of the axe and does nothing to it. Now, Vargas, realizing that the end is very near, he's like, death will be paying you a visit soon enough, along with the hundreds of victims you've killed, who will drag you down to hell with them. Unfortunately for Vargas, this isn't enough to convince Guts to save him, and he gets his head chopped clean off. Now, after witnessing this event, Guts looks a little bit distraught, and then he notices the demon child crawling through the streets. And not only that, the demon child's head turns into Vargas, almost as a reminder that, hey, you had the opportunity to save him, and now the memory of his dead spirit is gonna haunt you. Now the Count is very pleased by what happened, and he's like, it didn't show up after all, did you, Black Swordsman? So he's probably thinking, I probably scared him off. He's too scared to come in and fight me head on. And off in the distance, we see a mysterious girl watching the event, and she looks a little bit perturbed by it. Now, outside the castle, they're dragging Vargas's corpse to a heap of other corpses, and as they're about to toss his head right in, the Black Swordsman himself shows up in the dead of night. He takes down the two guys and looks at the head of Vargas. And he says, I won't fail like you. And now because it is nighttime and he's surrounded by dead corpses, the evil spirits rise up from the corpses and start attacking Guts. And they're screaming out, his head, we want the Count's head. And they start wrapping themselves around Guts' body. And even one of them gets into Guts' body and he begins to laugh in a very maniacal fashion. So just like Colette got possessed by one of the spirits, Guts got possessed by one as well. Luckily for him though, his will is strong enough where he's able to scare them off. He then tells the spirits that this is my fight. Mine, a person of flesh and blood. And with that, he decides he's gonna do it himself, and he's gonna kill the Count with his own flesh and blood.